Common mansplaining. You know what's crazy is I'm actually at the point now where like I rejoice every time we get this to work without like a huge snafu. Oh man. So yeah, it was gorgeous today, man. It was amazing. Like I walked out and I'm like, thinking, this is still winter technically, I guess, or early spring. And I'm out there and it's like, 75 degrees, sunny, gorgeous. Like we got that deep Carolina blue sky and
Yeah,
I'm like,
absolutely.
man.
Man, that's what really separates Carolina from the Midwest.
Right.
Is like when I was in the Midwest, they would have occasionally some warm days, but they'd be gray skies, things like that. Here,
Right.
yeah, we get even when it's cold, like with the Carolina blue skies, it feels good in the sun. And for everybody out there who's homebird down in Pacific Palisades, you're looking for a place with mild winters. Lumberton, North Carolina, very affordable. It's where I
Oh
spent
yeah,
the
that's
day
right.
today.
You've been in Lumberton most of the week, haven't you?
Yeah, so Lumberton, it's down. It's a bit warmer than up here in Raleigh. It's more like a Wilmington climate, a little bit.
Okay.
Not
Hey,
quite coastal.
so I'm still having trouble hearing you. Are you, I don't know. We only have got one person in chat looking at us at the moment, or at least so that's what the thing says. Can you guys hear him? Okay, if you're in there, just let me know. I want to make sure that everyone can hear Christian. All right. I don't. Uh-oh.
I'm
You just went
back.
away for a second, came back.
Yeah, I thought you paused, but I guess it was me.
No, man, that's just maybe live just doesn't like you tonight. I don't know. That's kind of weird that I can't hear you. I mean, you're definitely. It's like your volume is muted.
Let me double check. All right, hold on just a minute.
Yeah, just check to make sure. Can everybody hear him all right? Can you hear me all right? Can you see us? Now I can't hear you at all.
So now I'm back.
Are
You can
you are
hear me.
you at 100%?
Yeah, I'm 100%.
That's crazy. I mean, I can hear you, but it's like what I
Hold
what
on,
I, what I
hold
would
on
call
just a
like
minute.
30%.
Let's take a break because nobody's joined yet. I'm gonna listen on our thing and see what I sound like on YouTube. Give me a
All
second.
right, sounds good.
Oh, I'm clear and loud on YouTube, so it's just for you.
All right, maybe that's kind of weird. Maybe it's my phone. Maybe my phone doesn't like me. Maybe
Yeah.
it's I don't know. See. But anyway, for those of you out there, welcome to the chat. Welcome to Common Mansplaining. If this is your first time here, it's great to have you. And we definitely address customer comments. So if you guys have something you want to talk about, that's great. What do we got in the docket tonight? You want to talk about government spending, government cuts, and how that is sound economic principle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think right now, right, the media are spinning all the cuts as negative, obviously,
Right.
right? Because the American public are widely behind these cuts,
Absolutely.
and which is bad for Democrats. The government employees are particularly nervous, and they have a 98% Democrat association
Right.
skew. So yeah, so it's been spun that any type of reduction in government, right, reducing employees is bad because then we won't be able to attract the best. Um, Layoffs are all over the place in the private world in
Yeah.
big
Right. This
companies,
is nothing new.
and it doesn't stop them from attracting top talent.
Right.
Part of the talent, part of the draw for a federal job has long been outstanding benefits.
Yeah.
The pay has not been great, but it's usually okay, um, and you have a lot of job security. That is one of the draws. And normally, it was you were living in a place that didn't have high housing expense, like Los Angeles and New York, Philadelphia, Chicago.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, DC has become more expensive for
Yeah.
federal
Yeah.
workers.
Right.
So then they've had to keep raising the cost of living stuff because DC is so expensive, and you get these federal workers that are paid really high wages. Like, oh, I thought people were supposed to have like crappy wages when they work for the government. They find
This is
like
crazy. I'm still
Fauci.
having a super hard time hearing you. I don't know what is going on with my
Yeah,
man.
but
I'm
like
like
Fauci,
straining.
man, I was saying Dr. Fauci made more than the president. Right? There's not caps. Right? There's Congress is capped like dirt in salaries. Right? For like congressmen make like $174,000 a year. But in the bureaucracy in these agencies, those caps aren't there. Right?
Right.
Anthony Fauci made a lot more than the president.
Yeah, and his job was essentially like terrorizing the American public. Yeah, that's that's insane. And you know what? Elon Musk just sent out that thing to everybody saying, give me 5 things that you did last week or something like that. He's asking for 5 things. Do you know how happy I would have been in the private market if my boss says, all we need is 5 things you did last week? I'm like, I can list 70.
Yeah.
Like that's, if you're not able to list 5 things and justify your own job, you don't deserve to work.
Well, even that. So it wasn't a justification of their job. It was a thing to receive that they could receive and are checking their emails, and then
Yes.
they respond because they're looking for zombie accounts. They're looking for people that don't exist, that have died, that have left, right? And
Right.
one of the accounts I read about on X was somebody did this in a small county in Kentucky where they were trying to reduce the number of phone plans that the city was paying for, right? And so they sent out a thing,
See who
anyway,
responds.
that if people didn't respond, then they gave them some time and they cut them off. And when they cut them off, the only one that was legitimate was the phone line for the thumbprint thing in the jail that goes to the FBI. And they got that restored. All the other ones were cut because they were illegitimate, and it was a huge right. And so it's a big it's a test on its face. It looks like, hey, Elon's not my boss. I shouldn't have to answer to him. But it's a simple test of, are you a person?
Right.
Are you there? Right? Is
Right.
is there anybody out there?
And right, like, and that's, I mean, it makes perfect sense because that's what he's been finding in all of the other departments, like people who are getting social security checks that aren't people, right? Or aren't American citizens, or like that one guy that had, like, I think he was collecting social security like 34 times. Because he had little applications in every state or something like that. So it makes perfect sense just to do like a quick ping to see if everyone's who they say they are, or at least able to respond by whining about it. At least that proves that you're a real person. But now, I will say, so it's been a long time since I've had Econ 101, right? Like that's
Okay,
like
sure.
20 years in the past.
Yeah.
And you're probably more fluent than I am at the moment. But
So
I
a
did
little bit,
brush
yeah.
up.
All right. So Keynesian economics. This is what we're
Right.
talking about. So, right. Traditionally in economics, there are the 2 schools of thought. Adam Smith, right? Laissez-faire, the invisible hand.
Hey, Rose, how's it going?
And John Maynard Keynes, which is normally called pump priming or
Hold on one
Keynesian
second.
economics.
Hey, Rose, can you hear him all right? Can you hear me all right? Who can you hear well and who can you not hear well?
You can hear me fine, Rose.
It might just be me. I'm just making sure. I don't want to miss out on the public hearing everybody. Yeah, you can hear us? Okay, good. Just making sure.
Rose, is there room on that floating board for me? We can both be on the board, right?
Right. I'll take it. So yeah, Keynesian economics.
Keynesian economics, right? And so generally, the idea was Keynesian economics. They call it pump priming.
Right.
When the economy is better, because under laissez-faire, under Adam Smith, you would have these periods of boom and bust, depression. And they were getting better, but they thought maybe with some government management they could take the edge off, maybe, right? Especially the dips.
Right.
And so the idea is in a depression or even a recession, that the government has to deficit spend. Right. So you have a budget of $1 billion, just to use things. Normally it's $1 billion, but we're in a recession, so you borrow $5 billion. Right. And you spend it. So one of the things you do jobs programs, things that necessarily aren't needed, but it gives people some jobs, and there's a certain stability. And then those people spend their money on haircuts and other things, and it helps kind of stabilize things through the economy. And so that type of deficit spending theory, every politician loves, especially on the left. They're like, yes, I can spend money, I can borrow money. And so that's sort of always a crisis, because what's neglected, there's a second part of Keynesian theory. It's when times are good, which
Right.
is usually indicated by a lot of inflation.
Right.
That means the demand is exceeding supply. What you then do is you not only stop deficit spending, but you run a surplus for a little bit to pay back the debt, and
Right.
you lay off people from these jobs programs because the economy is going well. They should be able to find jobs out there. So the timing of this, of laying off federal workers, it couldn't be better, right? You, according to Keynesian sound economic principles, you want to do it during an inflationary period.
Right.
Right.
So, hey,
So,
Rose, I just want to tell you, I appreciate the sub, appreciate the like. Um, so yeah, so I did some research, right? I brushed up on my econ. So, and I remembered a lot of things. One thing I remembered is that I'm not a Keynesian, right? I do not
yeah,
particularly subscribe to his economic model, but I think you're right. Ultimately, that everyone in the current situation would probably be okay with government, like everyone would. Everyone I looked up who's influenced American economics, Adam Smith, Milton Friedman, whatever, they would all basically be in favor of government cuts. Now, it did say that Ken, I don't even know how to pronounce his last,
Keynesian.
Keynes,
John Maynard Keynes. His last name is
Keynes. All right.
Keynes.
So Keynes seemed to be the least happy to cut government spending. I mean, he would do it probably in
Oh
our
yeah,
situation, but he'd be like very measured, very, very calm, very strategic. Whereas Elon Musk is understandably, basically taking a hacksaw to this stuff, right? And I'm all with that. I think that
yeah.
that's exactly what Elon Musk should do, because part of the problem is we're in demand shock, right? Like we've literally been stimulating the government, the economic system from the central hub for as long as I can remember. We've been, basically injecting the economy with a lot of federal jobs. We've been injecting the economy with a lot of federal contracts. We've been pumping money into it, like with stimulus checks and stuff. So we've got so much, so much demand that, we could go crazy, right? Like we could lose our minds. And that's been building up for years and years and years. It's not just from like COVID forward. So I mean, we have to address it. We have to.
Well, yeah, we had before COVID, we had a very strong economy and a very tight labor market, and yeah. So so anyway, this is what I think one of the theories that Elon has, and this is where the Democrats disagree, and where they're trying to come up with sob stories of case studies of people who are going to
Right.
be really hardships for this. But he wants to overcut, and then if we cut too much, then add back.
Right.
Right. So
Which
he
makes.
would rather than undercut, he'd like to overcut and then say, "Oh, we actually need more workers there. Let's rehire and things like that."
Right.
So and that's a little bit because they want to kind of overhack, like his experience in the private sector. He hacked Twitter staff down to 40 people and was able to find they were able to operate, and then he could slowly start adding. But
Right.
that type of leanness gets you down to, you need to know what's essential, and what happens. And government programs that are jobs programs, the whole point is just to spend money on people. That needs to end first
Right.
when we're in an inflationary cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so
And
yeah,
and
so yeah, go.
yeah. No. Yeah. I was gonna say yeah. So I mean, obviously, right. He's got to, and you're not going to catch all of the chaff unless you really like go at it. You're if you try to like just okay, this program's no good, let's throw that out. This one's no good, let's throw that out. First of all, that takes an outrageous amount of time and effort to like individually go through each and he's doing it, right? He's still going through each and every program. So the fact that he's got AI and his little wizards is a boon to everyone. But even so, I'm all with it. Like him and Vivek Ramaswamy were both like, listen, we're going to cut more than you think we need to, and then we'll build back up what's absolutely essential. If you don't do it that way, you're not going to catch all of the junk. You're just going to like
Well, yeah.
miss half of
Well,
it.
they're coming from this sort of Tea Party libertarian viewpoint a little bit more, which is
Right.
that the Department of Education, USAID, are not essential departments of government, right? USAID can be handled by the State Department. We don't need a separate thing. The Department of Education might have been necessary 40 years ago, but now every state has their own Department of Education. There's no reason for the federal to be, certainly blue states like California do not want Trump's federal government telling them how to run their education plan.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
if they don't want it, right, and the red states don't want it, let's get rid of it. And and people are, he campaigned on this. Now, I mean, obviously, like sort of my centrist plan would have been to gradually draw down the department over a number of years.
right.
Um, Elon wants the savings now because
Yeah.
he sees that reducing that spending can cut the deficit or eliminate the deficit, which
Right.
is a noble goal, really. And then
Yeah,
let's
well,
see
and
how bad things are when
right.
we get that. If it's really bad, maybe we'll add some stuff back, but a lot of it can probably be handled by the Department of Defense for GI Bill stuff or the service academies, things like that. They can handle that. They don't need a separate Department of
Yeah.
Education.
Well,
And everything else delegated to the states.
right. Yeah, where I stand on this. I mean, if it's not an enumerated power on Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, then the 10th Amendment catches the rest, right? Like if you're not literally listed on the Constitution as a federal power, then by definition, the 10th Amendment reverts that power to the state or the local governments or the people. And I don't understand why for so long we have just basically ignored the 10th Amendment. Like I'm trying to figure out, I mean, like Social Security comes up and they're like, oh, no big deal, this isn't an enumerated power, but we'll do it anyway. I'm like, wait, what? And
Part of
don't get
it,
me wrong, because
yeah.
I get that, like, some of these are exceptional situations, like post-war, obviously
Yeah.
we needed to rebuild, or
Yeah.
depression, obviously we need to do something, or I mean, I don't think Lyndon Johnson's crap was necessary at all, but I think there are times where it's necessary for the government to kind of step in, but man, we're just overdo it.
Right. So if you study 20th century history a little bit more from an economic standpoint, there's a lot of debate that right. It's generally accepted that the government was too small when FDR was elected. He needed to expand the government, right? But that his market corrections and some of his New Deal stuff like price caps, price floors, actually did more to prolong the depression. That we would have
Right.
had a sort of capitalist grasping this opportunity when things were down, and then brought us back into prosperity longer than a 10-year depression, right?
Right.
So that is, especially looking back upon things, you can definitely find fault with FDR's things. I mean, but his intentions, right? As so many government let the government do this, and especially because so many states were woefully not set up, right? And you talked about post-war. So yeah, post-war we're seeing, and that's sometimes when the federal government takes over, it should be on a temporary basis. The Department of Education, right, should always have been, all right, some of the states aren't doing this, we're going to do it. But as
Right.
soon as the states are up to speed, which they are, it should go away.
Right. And all those programs had like sunset clauses originally. Like that's how
Yeah.
Social Security started. It was supposed to be a temporary measure, get us through the hard times, and then it all goes away. But then, of course, government is very, very reticent to just give up power. Right. We've seen that in every measure, and every time that a situation comes up where they could give it up, like anytime the Patriot Act has to be renewed or the Espionage Act has to be renewed or something, it's like all of a sudden there's this amazing bipartisan support and like 98 of the senators vote for it. I'm like, what? How? This is not a conservative principle at all. Like, where's this coming from? And
Government is generally more comfortable with them having more power than less, right? And this is, the framers knew that. I mean, it's the sort of the tyranny is somebody will want to get in your business, and but and what, because with entitlements, when they cut them, they'll try to make them painful, or the media, or the mainstream, or the left, will try to present them as more painful on micro level, individuals that are having a really hard time. Well, on a macro level, they can be easily,
Right.
absorbed and dealt with. Yeah.
Right. They come up with these like individual examples, and they're like, "Oh, Jose is his family is destitute now that he's," and they're doing that now for Doge too. They're doing it's like I read in the media every day. It's like one person who lost their job to federal whatever, and maybe that person was doing a good beneficial act for government. Maybe it was a good expense for taxpayers. Probably not. Like I'm just saying
Well,
that like on average,
he was working from home, so he's working another job, and now he'll
right.
just go to that one now and not get his unbelievably sweet government
Yeah,
pension
yeah.
and
But
benefits
meanwhile,
and healthcare, free healthcare, and everything. Yeah.
right,
So look, for every case that they're going to find, this is what the left does: is they try to find people that are damaged by policy, which there are going to be. We've elected Trump because we've accepted that we're going to those losers in this thing are acceptable losses.
right.
You know,
And it's not like this is a
and short
surprise.
term, yeah.
This is no surprise. And this is what drives me nuts, probably more than anything else, is Trump campaigned on this the entire time. He said, "I'm going to give it to Elon Musk and originally Vivek Ramaswamy," and they were very clear about how they were going to do it. They said that they were going to overcut on purpose and then build back up, and then the people voted, and it was a landslide. So I don't understand where like it's funny because the other thing I see in the media, the other spin is I see all these examples of the left claiming that there's a person who is on the right who now doesn't like Trump because of what's happening. And I'm like, no, like literally, we're all thinking, man, this is exactly what we hired him to do. And
Yeah.
now a president actually is doing what we hired him to do. What no, like we're all thinking, why didn't we get this every other president we've ever seen? Like
Yeah.
we're none of us are saying, "Oh no, Trump is doing exact." I mean, he just got peace in Ukraine. He's cut the government like he said he would. He fixed transgender stuff in sports. I mean, he's literally every one of his executive orders, save like 5 or 10 that I'm not happy with, but like the other 300 have been outrageously good answers to his promises that he came with from the very beginning. And oh my gosh, did they slander Elon Musk like he is Satan? And dude, it's driving me nuts. I mean, this guy,
Well, Elon Musk offers a sort of intellectual gravitas that Trump doesn't have. Right? Trump has charisma and and a leadership quality
right,
and guts, and we expect him to stand up for it. But he doesn't come across as an idea man, a brilliant grasper or thinker. Right? Elon Musk has that. You think this is somebody who has a lot of success, but it comes across as personally very intelligent. And him
right.
saying that, hey, I'm a person who's very intellectual and I love what Trump is doing, gives so much sort of intellectual weight now to Trump's policy.
Right. Have you seen? Oh man, did you see the recent like slander for Elon Musk? They made this video and it was like essentially like a fake. I mean, it was real, but it was like clipped in a very specific manner to make it look terrible. Like they acted like he was walking away from his son and forgot about him or something like that. But literally, his son is right there on and his son is like 4 or 5 years old. Like it's not like his son doesn't have the ability to walk down the stairs and follow him. But it's like the craziest stuff. Let's see. All right, when are grocery prices coming down? As the clueless clown said he would do day. Well, the truth is, according to PD, he did actually address it day one. Now, obviously, economics is something that flows in a delay. So when Trump, what the big thing that Trump did was all of his executive orders that decreased regulation on drilling and stuff and on oil pipelines and permitting. And he also, I mean, he addressed the energy situation like crazy. I mean, I think 10 or 15 of his executive orders were specifically to address Department of Energy in the area. And not people forget that that is basically where a lot of the cost comes from. Like almost half of your cost for any single product comes from the fact that you have to use industrial equipment to generate it. You have to use diesel to transport it from point A to point B. Every single one of those things is going to be affected by our additional energy production. And so when that happens, the prices will come down. Now, he's doing other things that I'm not as crazy about. Like I'm not a tariff guy, right? So his
Well,
games
yeah.
with China are they have mixed results. He's definitely got what he wanted in Canada and Mexico with those tariffs. So maybe he'll do it in China. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, let me respond to his question as well. So,
Yeah.
right, we've been talking about economics. So the big thing with Keynesian economic theory and Smith or laissez-faire economic theory is that they are macro
Right.
economic theories, right? They're not microeconomic theories. So when you go down to a case study, a certain person's experience, that is not reflective. And again, that a Republican now doesn't like what Trump is doing is not reflective because on a macro level, people are supporting him, right? So when it comes to grocery prices, now I don't know what according to play is buying. I know when I go to the grocery store, right? I'm shopping for deals. I'm looking at anything that's overpriced. I don't buy it. I
Right.
move on and I reward them. I'm like, I'm not going to reward you by still purchasing things that are high price. I will only purchase things that are low price,
Right.
right? And so that means that I do without certain things, um, and I send the message back to them. Hey, when we have things priced appropriately, they will sell. When we have things that are overpriced, they don't sell, and that will put pressure on prices to come down. If you
Right.
keep spending like you're going to buy the same things. So and that's one thing that on a macro level will show that prices can come down, but on a micro level, right? I don't know what you're spending groceries on, Eddie. What anybody, right? Everybody has their freedom to spend to
Right.
purchase. Um, to say that your grocery prices have not dropped,
Yeah.
shop around, use coupons, you use some discretion,
Right.
and
And
you'll I
maybe
think
don't
you
even
can.
maybe don't buy as much. Like this is one thing that people forget is that one of the ways that we send these signals back to the market is just by reducing consumerism, right? I get that everybody gets into this habit of like once you spend X amount, that you can never spend less than X. It always just has to keep growing and growing and growing. And that's something that happened to me in my marriage, right? Like when I had a wife, we would, she would spend, and when I would like get a promotion at work and like jump from $40,000 a year to $50,000 a year as a district manager, then all of a sudden she's spending $50,000 a year. I'm like, wait, why can't we just still spend 40,000 a year and save that extra 10? But like that's just how people are, right? Once you've got the money, you spend it. But in a crunch, this is how you reset the system. And moreover, the market is by far the best computer of what a price should be, right? Like the more the government gets involved in the government, even in Keynesian economics, it's not supposed to be like overbearing. It's not supposed to be like fascism or socialism. It's just supposed to be, present to inject itself to round off the rough edges, right? It's not supposed to be like making eggs less like Kamala Harris wanted to do or something like price controls or that's outsane. Europe is boycotting America. Are they? I mean, I think there are a couple of nations that are, but for the large part that I don't think that's accurate.
Well, what Europe has been doing is tariffing American products,
Right.
so that they're more expensive there. And so what we're doing is now Europe, yes, you're going to find a lot of loud people, especially and easy to find for the mainstream media to report on Europeans that are unhappy that the U.S. is making Europe spend money for their own defense, or to say that Ukraine is a thing that the U.S. should spend money for, but Europe should spend money for.
Right.
They don't obviously they don't appreciate and they disagree with those sentiments, and but by and large, right, it's the boycotting is not something that affects our
Right. Yeah. Now,
economy.
I've even seen. I mean, I see boycotting in even America now because of people hate Elon Musk so much that they're like, giving away their Teslas and stuff like that. They're like, returning them and stuff, selling them back to the dealership. I'm like, well, you know what? It doesn't even matter because for every person who like donates their Tesla, there's usually like another immigrant who's come over and loves it because it's like a status symbol. And so like it really doesn't work. The boycott doesn't work. And boy, Elon Musk, I want to talk about him for a few minutes. All right.
Sure.
Now, he is the richest person on earth. And I get that for Democrats, for liberals, for people on the left, that is like automatically a problem, right? Like it's like just being
they don't think
rich.
anybody should have money. They
Right.
want
Yeah.
to
It's
take all the money
yeah,
from
like he
everybody.
can have money, but it's like they don't want him to have more than I don't know what the magic number is. Right. And I've
What
asked.
they think is appropriate. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I've asked people, and I'm like, all right, so let's say he's got $2 million. What about 2,500,000? Like, where's the magic number where all of a sudden you have more than you need, and then like you can't have any more? So that's problem number one. Problem number two is I get the sense when speaking with my friends that are leftist that they think by having money you automatically acquire this obligation. And I'm like, no, there's a difference between something being morally obligatory and something being morally praiseworthy, right? If I give to charity, that's morally praiseworthy, but I don't have to. That is not a requirement of me. And Elon Musk doesn't owe me a damn thing, not one thing. He earned his money investing like he was supposed to, and he's a smart dude, so he
Work
made
hard
it
for
work.
it.
And he doesn't owe me anything for that. I didn't help.
Right. Well, one of the lines like from Fiddler on the Roof is, the leftist guy says, someday all the rich's money will be ours. And it's like, oh, won't that be wonderful? If they'd agree, I'd agree. But we're not going to take it. We're not going to take it from force from anybody. But if any rich person wants to give us money, we're happy to take it. But we have no claim that money is ours in any way.
Right,
They're
right.
free
And
to do what they want with it, including give it to us, which we will accept.
right, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Speaking of, if there's any sponsorships out there that are looking for a great new channel to sponsor, no, I mean, yeah. So it's like, yeah. Where's the magic line? Like, if you have $3 million, are you required to give back? Or if you have 4 million, are you required? Like, where's the magic line? I mean, he gives back by producing for society. This is Adam Smith, right? This is like the invisible hand. So, like, if you get to the point where you are engaging in your own self-interest, but that self-interest causes you to create a product that society wants and uses, then you are benefiting society through the very fact that you are doing that, right? Like he's producing clean energy cars. I can't see how that would be. This is what drives me nuts, right? So the left is generally in favor of clean energy. So, like, why wouldn't they be happy with this guy?
No,
That
no, no,
he's a
no, no.
multiplanetary species, dude. What's wrong with that?
All right, Eddie. That's okay. We want to see through it. The left sees climate change as a nebulous thing that they can use to extract wealth and use it to their ends, right? And so, climate change is just a bugaboo that allows them to have more control over all aspects of the economy. Because when it comes down to things like electric cars, right, they're not as committed to them. They're not as committed to things that are good for the climate, clean things that are good for the earth.
Right, because you have to
It affects them politically, right?
Right.
Climate change is all about political power. It's chiefly because the Republicans are aligned against climate change policies, right? So it's not about whether the climate's getting warmer or not. It's whether or not it's expedient. The policy to combat whatever is happening is expedient and worth it. Right?
Right.
Republicans say no. Any policy to combat the natural warming or the net warming that we're seeing in our climate is not worth the price tag and the changes we have to go to.
So he's talking about maple syrup producers sell 40% of their products overseas, and now they're on. So here's the thing about that, right? If they've lost 40% of their business, quote unquote, and they haven't really, it's far more complex than that. But let's say that's the truth, right? That means the prices come down because now their price optimization computation makes it so that they have to lower prices to continue moving the volume that they're accustomed to. And they're going to find that now it's not going to be 40% lower, but it's going to be somewhere in like 10, 15% lower so that they can reach a greater audience domestically. And that's what their clientele is going to convert to. And I think honestly that's probably Trump's game, right? Like that's what he wants, is to make more domestic production, more domestic consumerism within the nation instead of relying on interstate, or international rather.
Yeah, according to Blake, this will lower your grocery bills by having lower cost Vermont maple syrup. Now, he could also tariff the freeloading Canadians who are just dumping this cheap Canadian, inferior Canadian maple syrup in our market. And that could help you. But I mean, look, this is a micro market, Vermont maple syrup, right? It's going to fluctuate. As with any market, I know it will fluctuate. We can't, right? We can't say in the free market thing everything's going to always go up and you're always going to sell everything you produce. You have to fluctuate. You have to ride with this stuff. What they do is just they need to silo it. You store it and say, all right, Europe's not buying this. We're going to wait and hold it in reserve until the demand gets to a point that we want to, and then we'll be able to supply it.
Right.
So, you know,
so
the fact
I was going to tell you
one small product and producers is having, you know, a momentary blip. People still know about Vermont maple syrup.
By the way, not for nothing, you don't need maple syrup to survive. I'm just saying.
Well,
as a matter of fact, it's probably
you can have fake maple syrup. I don't buy Vermont maple syrup. It's too expensive.
Not only that, you don't need syrup at all. Like I mean, I literally lived my entire life. I don't think I've had syrup on a product except for maybe once in a restaurant in the last year. Like it's probably just bad for you. Like who even? But all right. Oh, so I was going to tell you, I did some research. You remember we spoke about Elon Musk a little bit last time with Charlie when he was on and talked about his good and just society. And so I went and dug into Elon Musk's his charitable donations because he was challenging Elon Musk's return to society, essentially his return on investment. And do you know that Elon Musk actually holds the world record for charitable donations? He literally donated $5.7 billion just the other year. And I'm like in that one, and that's just one instance. In that one stroke, Elon Musk has given back more than I will ever make in my life. Probably times 20. And that's not good enough for him, right? Then they also have to tax him at 91%, like the post-war taxation bracket was. I'm like, what are you guys? No one's going to work if that's the case. All they want
him to do is support the Democrats, and they will love him.
Yeah, right, of course.
Even if he keeps all that money back to himself. Let's just call this what it is for a thing. The hatred of Elon Musk is because Elon Musk is supporting the Republican Party, and there's nothing else because of it. Anything he's doing is common sense and praiseworthy. All of his companies have a reason and a market purpose that people want, and they're filling the need, and they're succeeding, and they're pushing to innovate in their spaces. Any hate is not because of he's earned it; it's because of political affiliation.
Right, and I'll be the first person to tell you that Elon Musk is not a perfect person, right? Like nobody is, and I feel like people forget about that. Like, even the greatest of in the past have had these mixed histories. Like MLK wasn't perfect, and yeah, I mean, literally, you can. I can just go through 35 examples, but ultimately, it's like the moment you get rich or powerful, and then you have any kind of flawed. I mean, I'll be the first person to tell you that Elon Musk says some dumb stuff online. He tweets occasionally, right? But when you tweet that much, that's just bound to happen. We saw that with Trump too. You're just going to have and he retracts them. That's the other thing too. Like Elon Musk actually goes back and says, yeah, this was a stupid thing to say, and deletes it, as opposed to most people who would just, leave it there or double down or something like that. And
I took some Ambien. I just took some Ambien, and then I tweeted, so it wasn't me, right. Please forgive me.
Ketamine, right. Like he's obviously nobody's perfect, but I don't feel like, there's that classic saying from Spider-Man. It's actually from Voltaire that, with great power comes great responsibility. And I mean, people say that all the time, but the truth is, I don't believe that's accurate. I believe that you have responsibility to be a good steward of your own stuff, but you don't have all this responsibility to everybody else all of a sudden just because you have power. Now, Don't get me wrong, it's morally praiseworthy if you do, but it's not a requirement.
Well, you're expected the same social construct everybody has to not, deliberately injure or steal from or or break laws that we're going to steal.
Shouldn't exploit. Right. Yeah. And that's one of the bigger problems too. Like when you come down to it, really the left is moving in a very socialist direction, and so what they actually feel like is that anytime someone's got money that's basically above, I don't know, $1 billion, or I don't know what the magic number is, but then all of a sudden it's automatically exploitation, right? Like because of the Communist Manifesto.
No. Let's call this what it is. Here's a little common mansplaining. The left hates anybody who has earned the status of what we call FU money. that has a conservative market or political viewpoint, right? If you've got FU money where you can't be pushed around or you can't be encouraged or corrupted by money,
right?
Because you have enough, because you have achieved the American dream, that level, that's the American dream. That level of financial independence where you have FU money. And they're happy if that person happens to be a big government leftist, like Bill Gates,
George Soros,
right? George Soros, but they're not happy if somebody achieves FU money and decides, hey, maybe the Constitution is a limiting principle in government.
Yeah,
Those
maybe.
people, they want to take all their money away.
It drives me nuts. Yeah. Oh, did you see? Okay, what was the other one? They were calling his son a human shield. I'm like, really, guys?
What?
Like
Only
this
because
is.
you're trying to kill him.
Yeah,
Stop
I mean,
trying
this
to
is
kill him, and they won't be
this
a
is the
human
level
shield.
that we're stooping to now. And I love the one where it's like he's stealing your private information from the IRS, and I'm like, okay, first of all, you can add him to the list of like your banker and your accountant and you're like there's like 50 people that have all of your private information at any point in time. That's not counting anyone who like hacks in and sees it online. That's not counting anything illicit. And then on top of it, like out of all those people, Elon Musk is the one I would want most to have that information. Like he's got a top secret clearance. He works with government contracts all the time. He's literally under more scrutiny than probably anyone else has ever been.
If Elon Musk did something screwy to my personal data, somebody would catch it, and then I'd be like, "Sweet, I'm gonna,
right,
a
sold, yeah,
has acted malfeasantly." Right? We're not saying that Elon Musk should not be scrutinized, but we're saying the slander, the thing that you're doing is pitched and not according to what he has. It's unearned. Let's put it.
Now, here's one place where I'll call out the right when because I give it to you guys straight. So if I see something fishy on the right, I'll say it. So now Trump in the past has spoken out against like lobbyists in government and stuff like that. And now I think he just removed like one of his executive orders removed the requirement, right? Like so now he's basically asking for more lobbyists in government. And I'm like, why? Like I just don't get some of this stuff. I don't get. Like he's still got that 10% that I'm like looking at. I'm like, this doesn't really help, or maybe even actively hurts. But
I will have to see his reasoning behind that. I mean,
yeah,
I would say, like with you, I generally think that lobbyists should not be given government roles right away. But if somebody could lay out evidence, or maybe it's on a case by case basis, but I would be very skeptical of that. That's something I think that should be scrutinized. It might be appropriate, it might, but it does seem like, hey, if this is something that could introduce a corrupt element to our government, we should definitely be.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one I see on Elon Musk is pretty funny. Is they're whining about the contract that he got where he like sold him like $400 million worth of cyber trucks or something to the State Department.
It was
and I'm like,
400,000.
Yeah, now this is like a normal contract with a very very protective vehicle, right? Like
no. Sorry, I've done some more research on this story. Okay, so there was never a contract for $400 million. There was a contract for $400,000 in vehicles. They were non-armored vehicles, just some normal like Cybertrucks. And then there was some separate money to explore armored vehicles, and there was this sort of estimate of if they were to replace all of the State Department's vehicles or whatever with armored vehicles, it would be around 400 million. There was never a contract or anything for this. Contract was for 400,000, which Cybertrucks, that's like 8 Cybertrucks, or maybe even like less than
Now,
that.
see, that's like, that drives me nuts because that's exactly the error, like the style of error that they're bringing up when Doge posts its stuff, right? Like they're like, oh no, that contract wasn't actually for 500 million, it was for 320 million, and the other part hadn't been spent yet. And I'm like, okay, this is really pedantic, but then they do it.
Yeah.
It's the same
the
game.
money,
It drives
the
me
money
nuts.
that we spent, it was never agreed upon. It was something to explore, the potential they were open to, but and their estimate, there was just an estimate attached to it. If they went ahead with it, they were saying we think it'd be $400 million if you were to replace every single State Department vehicle around the world with armored Cybertrucks. But that was never agreed upon. They were just, sort of exploring how much it was going to cost to do one Cybertruck, armored Cybertruck. They'd never done it before. That was all that was really confirmed. So the fact is, the government can still make these determinations, and we should determine if it's a good contract. We, the voters, will say like, hey, if you're doing bad contracts, you should be voted out of office if you have good contracts.
Right.
But don't slam this thing or tell it to us that, hey, this is potentially a $400 million contract. No such funds have been dedicated to it. It's just because if you read, somebody quickly read through this thing and went down to the number. We estimate, replacing all would cost this much. And think the government's they've done no such thing.
This is insane. It's insanity. I mean, well, yeah. So, right, like at the base level, I just can't understand why anybody would be against Doge. I just can't. For the life of me, this might be the single greatest thing I have seen government do ever, like in my lifetime. I mean, maybe in the past they did some stuff, but during my lifetime, this might be the single greatest undertaking the government has ever attempted. And
right.
even a failed job is still going to be way better than not trying.
We should accept as U.S. citizens, we should accept a little bit of pain in the bureaucracy, and maybe the national parks will be slightly understaffed or something like that. And then there'll be an adjustment. Then they'll hire people who get things, because there were a lot of temporary. One of the things they talked about were that all the temporary workers got laid off.
Right.
But on a case-by-case basis, they evaluate this, because one thing is there were people who'd been employed for 10 years and had been such good employees, they got a promotion to a higher job.
Right.
And when you do that for a year, you put on temporary status for that higher job, right? To make sure you've done that. So it's like, I'm not really a temporary worker. I've been working there for 10 years. Just I had this 1 year gap because I was promoted for being good. The sort of block cuts.
Right.
Those are the type of things he's going to go back and say, look, we overcut. And bring those people back and give them back pay. And so those things are going to find out. But cutting is when you cause the pain. That's when the people hear ouch, and they say, oh, it's the people that don't yell ouch. You're like, oh, maybe they were, those were dead employees. That was dead money anyway.
Right.
When people yell ouch, then you come back and say, oh, okay, we actually need you. Okay, that's good. Boom, 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 boom. And
right. And yeah, it's going to be like that.
This is a transitional that will be painful. Let's just roll with it and see where we are in a year.
Right. And I will say, I'm happy with the scrutinization, right? Like I'm happy with the fact that they probably should employ an internal scrutinizer, like to just check for, error correct. I don't know if they do or not, but I know that there's an external, in addition to all of the other like media outlets who are already doing it. I know that there's at least one person from the IRS, I believe, who's begun an audit into the Doge, stuff, which is great. What is this? Why are some people opposed? Yeah, I don't know. Teresa, the only reason that I can honestly think of is because they're on the take. That's it. Like, I just read an article the other day where Stacey Abrams was getting like $2 million funneled into her private founding.
No, way more than $2 million. It was
this is how they all end up rich. This is how they go into like it seems like every single politician, they go into office and they're like, their net worth is like $800,000. And they come out and their net worth is like 130 million. I'm like, what in the world lets them do that other than being on the take?
Yeah, I mean, the other reason could be that the for political right now, it's just political gold. It's giving so much support to the right. It's making the left just seem really, and their opposition, it's knee jerk. They're like, because the right is doing this, because it's making the right look so good, we have to oppose it. Something must be wrong here. They must be bad actors. Because if they were doing an audit and they were cutting people, it wouldn't be based on merit. It would be based on DEI.
Right.
Right. And so they don't like the standard of cuts.
Which
standard is merit based, not DEI based.
Yeah, absolutely. To Teresa's point, yeah, I've had to do it with my personal finances. You got to purge every now and then. You got to go like go in and cancel subscriptions and stuff like that. You have to change your car insurance to make sure it's still the right price because they hike that stuff up, the phone bill, all that stuff. But one of the funny things though is like that's a microeconomic situation as opposed to a macro. But I would claim that the macroeconomic system needs that kind of oversight even more than the micro one. Like I would claim it's the other way around. From the left, you would hear people say, well, that's just a personal situation at your house. In the macro world, it's not the same. It's too complex. And, we can borrow indefinitely into the government and build more and more debt and it's no big deal. And I'm like, no, it gets to be a big deal eventually.
Yeah, Keynes says that it is a big deal, and then you need to be responsible when times are good, and you don't need to pump prime anymore to stop deficit spending, right? So this is sound economic principles to get the deficit under control. There's no reason during an inflationary period for the government to overspend. And so the one thing, here's my one critique. So Trump has talked about immediately cutting taxes or returning a DOGE dividend. Have you heard about this? He talks about back to the people. I would rather have that sort of be held in the sovereign wealth fund or something, mainly because at least for a year, because of that debt ceiling, right? I'd like us to come down from that debt ceiling. Right now, there's a debt ceiling.
Yeah.
Because when we hit that debt ceiling, it gives the opposition party, i.e., the left, so much leverage.
Right.
If they can stop us from raising that debt ceiling. So if we can come down and apply all this so that we're so far below that debt ceiling that we're not, if something major happens, we don't automatically have to go back to them to raise that debt ceiling. That's what I feel like would be wise.
One of the things so they discussed, I think they discussed 20% back to the people, 20% toward the debt. So if that's what they do, I think I'd be okay with it. After all, this is
first year. I would like for the first year 100% to be towards the deficit and the debt. And then they talk about doing other cuts or dividends.
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, they need to balance the budget. I don't understand. I've never understood why that is so hard in my life. Like, ever in my life, I'm like, I'd go do it. I'm like, all right, cut this, cut this, cut this, half this, cut this. Like, all right, we're done. Like, what is the problem? I get that the biggest issue is that with our quote unquote mandatory spending, we literally have more than our GDP could possibly produce. Like as Teresa's mentioning, yeah, like we just can't manage all of the interest on the debt, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and then national defense. Like between those five, you're literally underwater, right? You're basically you're in over your head, and so I'm praying that when DOGE goes in, and takes, I don't want him to well, I do want to get rid of Social Security, but that's just me. But even if they do a more measured approach and they get rid of just the fraud and corruption in Social Security and just the fraud and corruption in Medicare and just the fraud and corruption in Medicaid, I'm hoping you get to a point where you cut enough where now you can balance the budget. Now you can give back to the people and relieve our tax burden. And that's, again, it's sound economic principle. What is this? Those opposing a benefit. Yeah, right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, this is obviously the left wants to do this because the left gets all the money from this. They get money sent to their private publications like Politico that spin propaganda for them.
All right. So here's the other thing. So I worked, or my political science class was taught by somebody who was a top aide for U.S. Congress.
Okay.
And so the U.S. Congress, the Senate and the U.S. Congress are both. One of their big incentives is to try to bring federal dollars home to their district, right?
Okay.
So that they can, when they run for re-election, they say, "Hey, this was some money I got earmarked to be spent right here in where their home district, right?
Right. To put a
And on my
base
home
or
state." So that's
infrastructure.
whether base or whatever. So they want to really show that. So that's one of the things, the earmarks is for guys to get behind things. They really, at different points that have been, to get a balanced budget, you had to really severely limit earmarks because congressmen are so for their own reelection efforts, really like to show, hey, I brought some money
Right.
back to my district. The more the better, right? You get a naval base in the middle of Nebraska, if you're on the Ways and Means Committee or Appropriations and stuff like that.
Right.
And they do that because that. So this is what we call pork, and it's under Keynesian theory, it's fine to do that when times are bad, when we
Right.
need to pump crime. Okay,
Right.
where does the money need to go? Who needs it? How can we? Okay, this area is about to your market, but when times are good, which is to find inflation, we need to cut that spending, which will cut inflation, and all that sort of pork incentive needs to go away. And Congress is reluctant to do that. And the Democrats,
Right. Of course.
even the opposition party, were usually able to get some money through because the budget was so big. The
Right.
1.4 trillion payments the Treasury made, and nobody was watching, that they could still get some money through. Now it has to be tied to a bill. It has to have all these things. It has to be, everything has to be legitimate. It's going to be harder for them to just get pork back to their district, which is
Right.
again,
Yeah. And
which they
it drives
personally
me
benefit
nuts.
from.
Yeah, it drives me nuts every time I see one of those like giant omnibus bills that are like 1,200 pages long and have, it's like one central thing, maybe two or three, and then it's like earmark, like down for hundreds of pages. And I'm like, and my thing is, I don't even mind for some of it. Some of the stuff is like, okay, this is interstate infrastructure, whatever, right? Like, fine, repair the road, but that's not
Roads
that
and
expensive.
bridges, yeah.
But it drives me nuts when it starts to be like, oh, this is $2 million for an Obama museum, and this is $1 million for da 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 da, and like a trans opera, and this and that and the other. And I'm like, come on, guys! Like some of this stuff is just wasteful, and I get the sense that they are really doing it just to say, hey, look what I did! Like, haha, I
Get
brought
money
money back to the state.
back to the district. Yeah, it really is. And so hopefully there'll be a pause on that. I mean, that's a big thing. It is kind of a line item. I think one of the interesting things is nobody can read those bills, but now with AI, you can say, AI, show me all the crap in this bill, and AI is just going to be bullet point.
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea, actually.
And so, ChatGPT just feed these bills in. And so people will be able to parse unparsable stuff. That's essentially, they made the bureaucracy so large and so complex, but AI is able to find the weird stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's gonna be perfect. I can't wait. Now, what are your thoughts on? I've never liked the thought of like one bill and then attaching 475 items to it. Like, I don't understand. Like the big stuff. I mean, okay, if you want to do a one bill for like all the little stuff, that kind of makes sense. But like the big stuff, why can't we just have like, okay, if we want to fix immigration, for example, why can't we just have an immigrant? Because that bill, for example, that they whined about the Republicans dumping had a ton of pork barrel spending in it. It was like tons of money to Ukraine, tons of money to Israel, tons of money to every single person in the world, and it didn't solve the problem. And they're like, "Oh, Trump killed this and called all of his friends up in a back alley." I'm like, he should have. Like, you should have. This bill is terrible. Like, but why can't we just have that one thing when it's an important issue?
Well, right, when you're whipping votes, right? If somebody says there's no vote on something you want to pass, you say, all right, I'll give you an earmark. within reason or something like that, and now you can ensure their vote. It is, uh, it's a thing that
Scott, what's
parliamentary
up?
procedure, things like that. Um, but yeah, that type of things. It's usually because the bill is written when it's just that is lacking votes. Say it's 6 votes short. Now you
Should it,
got to get it where it needs to be.
but should
If
it
you
be? I
have
mean,
a
if like
if you have
okay,
a wide margin, like say we had an extra 50 seats in the House,
okay,
or had 60 seats in the Senate, right? We would have a lot less of that because there'd be enough votes. All right, maybe we only got 52 that are ready to pass this without earmarks, right?
right,
But
but
when
okay,
we're
but
so close, that's just like a breeding ground for earmarks.
okay, but we do have a majority in both, so I'm
No,
trying to figure out
we have
like
a,
what
we have
who's
a
the
very narrow majority in the House.
yeah, I get that, but like if Trump puts out a thing, right, or somebody comes up with a like a conservative like bill affixed to a problem or something like that, or and then they put it out. Like, who are the holdouts? Like, who are the people on the Republican Party that are like, no, I could do this with everybody else on my team, but I'm going to hold off so that I can get
Yeah,
earmarks. Like,
there are the Republicans that are in districts that voted for Obama that are more liberal, right? They say like, oh, this is too conservative. I can't do this. I need support. I need to bring some money back to my district to cover me for me paying for this, right? And the number of people that, right, if we had big majorities, um, that's the Newt Gingrich and the Tea Party, right? When there was big Republican majorities in the House, they were able to fight earmarks really well. And when you have that in the Senate, you can do it as well. But when you've got narrow majorities, and we've got 2 or 3 in the Senate, but 2 of these, right, Murkowski and Collins, are pretty easily swayed to the left, right? And all of a sudden you get down to it, right? Like, what was it, Hegseth, or at least a couple of them had to have a vote cast by J.D. Vance. So, right, there are more liberal Republicans that can be swayed, and you usually, when they're saying having ethical qualms, you're like, hey, we'll give you a naval base. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll sign that bill or something.
of course, yeah. Well, yeah, it's easy when it's like that, but it's like, God, Lee, we got to get rid of those rhinos. I mean, I don't understand why. That's the
Well,
swamp.
yeah,
That's the rest of the
that,
swamp
that,
that needs to be drained. And
that's
oh,
what
did
the
you
Tea
hear the
Party.
other
That's
day
what
that
the Tea
Hegseth?
Party did.
What was that?
That's what the Tea Party did.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
they
yeah.
reformed,
Well,
and they did weed out a lot of them. Trump made a few bad calls, right, where some of the people that he supported were so out there they couldn't win stateside office. That, like in Alabama, remember there was a Democrat senator from Alabama once because and from Missouri because the one that was during the campaign, during the debate, was saying the government should ban um, abortion for rape victims, right? And it was like, that's never going to happen. Why are you talking about it?
yeah,
But
right,
you're
right.
trying to
Some of
get
this stuff you
elected.
just got to let go.
And then people punished him for it, and they were like, "We're going to vote for the Democrat." She was out 1 term,
Right,
but
right,
it
right,
was
right.
like Trump had
Well,
made a few tactical errors with who to support, but by and large, the Tea Party and Trump has been trying to weed out rhinos and get more reliable conservative votes.
gotcha, gotcha.
And it's
No,
not perfect yet. It's not there.
did you see the most recent slander on Trump? They're calling him racist again because he's getting rid of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and replacing him. Really, it's Hegseth doing it. But like the funny thing is, Trump put him, made him chief of the Air Force. And then of course Biden promoted him to chairman of the Joint Chiefs, but Trump's the one that put him there in the chief set. Like
Yeah.
he put him on the National Security Council, and then when he had to go, it was time for him to go because he wanted
Yeah.
to implement all these DEI
Yeah.
policies. Then all of a sudden, Trump's racist. I'm like, really?
No, he just disagrees with his policies. If our policies disagree, that doesn't make us racist.
Right.
He
All
wants
right.
to
Well,
take it out
anyway,
in a different way. It's not the way we want to go.
guys, that's all I really had for you guys today. Are there any more questions in the section? Scott, I see that you made it. Appreciate your support, brother. But yeah, guys, put your questions, your comments in the thing, and we'll get to them as we repost this. We'll probably cut this video up and then repost it in sections a little bit later. But really appreciate all your support. Thank you so much. Please consider subscribing and stick with us for the long term. Welcome to Common Mansplaining.
Don't be spun. Get the common sense here, people.